Background on what we're here to do tonight. Back in 1941, Colonel Haines, who was a very wealthy shoe merchant here in York County, he made a fortune and he loved scouting. And in 1941, he invited all the scouts in the whole council to come down here to his farm to celebrate his birthday for a whole weekend. Now, it wasn't Mr. Haines, Colonel Haines, was not a man of a small ego. Although he was very short, he had a huge, huge ego. So this wasn't just a farm, this was Haines Wizard Ranch, the Yellowstone Park of the East. That little pool of water over there is not a pond, that is Lake Haines. He had a boat, a big cabin cruiser down on the Chesapeake Bay, called Sanaya. What's Sanaya spelled backwards? Haines, right. He was very interested in physical fitness and athleticism and so forth. He would walk up to people and say, if you swear that you will give up smoking for the rest of your life, I will pay you $50 on the spot right now. He had people that worked for him in his shoe stores. And he would say to them, hey, when the time comes to repaint your car, I'll pay to paint your car as long as I can put advertising on the side. He said that he was the shoe wizard because he made such inexpensive shoes available to the general public. He was a showman. He spent all night waiting to be the first car in line to cross the Memorial Bridge, the concrete bridge that goes between Columbia and Wrightsville, so he could get his photograph in the paper being the first car across that bridge. So he's really an amazing man. And so he had the first Haines Safari here in 1941, and he had buffaloes, he had Indians come in from the west. He was an honorary chieftain in one of the western tribes. He owned land in South Dakota. You've heard of Haines Acres, Haines Road here in York, Pennsylvania. That's where his home was. So this guy was really, really something, but he loved kids, he loved scouts. And so it was such a success, they repeated it in 1945, 1950, 1955, 1960. I had an opportunity as a youngster, just a brand new, second-class scout, to attend the 1960 Wizard Safari. Now, with a show of hands, is there anybody, I know there's at least one or two here that attended the 1960 Safari. Show of hands. There's one. Okay, sir, if you'd come on up here to the front, please. Anybody attend the 1955 Safari or any of the earlier ones? So I guess the 60 is the earliest for us. Where? Oh, yes, I understand that. Yes. Oh, okay. Come on up.
Guys, be careful.
So, in any event, to continue on with the story, what happened with Colonel Haines was in 1960 at the last Haines Safari, he knew he was getting elderly. He was up in his 80s. So he donated this whole farm, or Haines Wizard Ranch, the Yellowstone Park of the East, donated it to the local Boy Scout Council with the hope that scouts would continue to use it. And at that time, the council maybe didn't take full advantage of their opportunities. They sold off the buffalo herd, they knocked down the barns, they just let it go back wild. But there were a number of old scouters who appreciated what a fabulous place this really is. And so in 1987, the idea came about to have a council camporee. They asked would I be the general chairman of the council camporee. I said I have no interest in running a council camporee, but if you want, I'll try to recreate the safari that I remembered from 1960. And they go, okay, great, go do it. So we got a whole team of people that went along with that idea, and I'm going to introduce some of them in a minute. But the point was, in 1987, we recreated the tradition of the Haines Safaris. But because Colonel Haines was passed on, we called them Wizard Safaris. So the old ones were Haines Safaris, the new ones are Wizard Safaris. So they've been in 87 and roughly every 4 years since then. But since the idea came about that what we should do is bury a time capsule in the 1987 safari, with the idea that it will be opened approximately 30 years in the future, because that would be 100 years from the very first scout camping at Wizard, which had occurred in about 1916 or so. So people who attended the 1987 safari were asked to take a 3x5 card, file card, name, rank, unit, how old you are, and then make a prediction for the future. So with a little bit of luck, there's probably a couple hundred of those cards in there. There's a bunch of other stuff as well, and even though I was present when this thing was sealed up, I honestly don't remember what all's in here. So I'm going to introduce a few people that have been involved with this procedure, and then we'll get to the main event. John Strine, what was your role with the both putting the thing in the ground and getting it out of the ground?
Well, I was just a scouter at the time, and George and I were friends, and he needed some help for that safari. I got involved before my son was even involved in scouts, but he was here as a youngster. My daughter was too, so
Matt,
they got
put your hand
cards.
up.
They got cards in here. He was probably 4. My daughter might have been 6, 5, when they were here. So they remember putting this in the ground.
Okay. John Paclembo, what do you remember? What was your role? And what is this thing?
Sure. Well, I was never a Boy Scout, but I was friends with a Boy Scout standing here beside me, and worked together on trying to bring the safari grounds back, knock back the jungles, among other things, including working with John in the time capsule project. The time capsule that you're looking at is actually a 500-pound bomb case. A bomb case, which means it's just the canister, nothing inside but your cards. Okay, it's not going to go boom.
And
this was built in York, Pennsylvania. You know where in York, Pennsylvania, Harley-Davidson has the manufacturing plant? Before Harley-Davidson had the manufacturing plant, they had another factory there that was AMF, American Manufacturing and Foundry. They made snowmobiles and some other types of equipment. Before AMF was there was a very large foundry next door to the AMF building. And originally that was owned by the U.S. government in World War II. And during World War II, they manufactured anti-aircraft guns for battleships and aircraft carriers to supply to the Navy for the war. In addition to making the anti-aircraft guns and mounts, they also manufactured certain ammunition or ordnance, and it was called the Naval Ordnance Plant York, and that's a bomb case produced by the Naval Ordnance Plant in York, Pennsylvania, probably fabricated or formed in the 70s, 1970 era. And it's just a piece of ductile iron pipe that's heated cherry red and shaped into the shape that you see here, and then they ship them out to another place where they put in the fuse and the good stuff that makes it go boom.
Okay, thank you. Now, is there anybody else here that was actually involved in the planning of the time capsule? I don't want to overlook anybody. Okay. All right. Oh, there's one. Okay. Come on up. Okay. All right.
I'm upright.
So, one of the things that we really hoped would happen, and I believe it has happened from what I know, my vision was that if you had an 11, 12, 13-year-old kid in 1987 put a card in this thing and it was going to be open 30 years or so later, that perhaps that kid would come back as a parent with a scout of their own who would enjoy finding, Dad's card that was put in. Now, I know the answer to my question, but is there anybody here who was here in '87 that's back here with a child of their own who's a scout here? Okay, come on up. Bring your child with you.
Hi, George.
We're getting there. Be patient. Patience is a virtue.
Catherine, our dad was a Boy Scout. He wasn't involved, so I come up.
Yeah, your dad put something in the capsule and you're here.
I know I was here. I can't remember if I actually put in, but I remember.
Why don't you guys stand up here along the...
George. Where's George?
Yeah, come on around this way and maybe... Now, what I had originally thought to do, guys, it's easier for me to talk if you're not talking at the same time. What I had originally thought would be that we just have a father and a son, and I was going to pick the youngest son to help open the capsule. But I was inspired to ask, is there anybody here with a grandson? And the answer is yes. Would you come up and introduce your son and your grandson? So this shows how scouting stays in a family and goes through generations. Your name, sir?
My name is Gary Thomas. This is my son Andrew Thomas. This is my grandson Jackson Thomas. And this hat was my dad's hat, Roy Thomas. And my dad and myself were up here in 1960 for the big Haines safari. It's called the Haines Ranch at the time. They had a big Marine helicopter that landed across the field here, across the ravine, and we watched that. But most of the campsites were up here, I believe. It was a fabulous time, and Mr. Haines was still riding his horse around the campsite. So,
Okay.
four generations.
So now you have an opportunity to make history of your own because there's a new time capsule that's going to be created this weekend. Justin, would you like to tell people about the new opportunity?
Every participant that is here this weekend, if you come to the Scouting Museum, there's an index card. Well, there's a specially made card there. You will have the opportunity to fill it out, and then we will put it in the next time capsule. In the Leader's Guide instructions, it was also provided that each unit may provide one small item for the time capsule to be buried. That will also be collected at the Scouting Museum, which is behind me. So I look forward to opening the next one in about 30 some years. So.
Okay, so you didn't come to hear us all talk. You actually came to see what's in here. So where's your grandson?
George.
Okay. And John, you got the wrench?
Yeah. It's going to take a little bit.
Okay. John, you want to come forward?
We'll get it loose.
Okay, the adults are going to get the end cap loose. It unscrews. We want to make sure we can actually get it off.
Could you step to the left a little bit, please?
I'm asleep.
Okay, it's unwinding. That's okay.
About a half an inch thick.
500-pound bomb.
100-pound boat. Mark 82.
Okay. Now, is he comfortable enough to reach in and pull something
See if
out?
I can see anything.
I can help. What's in there?
Way down there.
What we're finding, I have to kind of describe this for most of you. Because when this was pulled out of the ground, it was pulled out with this wire bail, and so the thing was hanging this way. So what's happened is everything is shuffled to the other end, and I doubt that this little guy has a long enough arm to even get in there.
Oh, we got a stick.
Oh, okay. All right, he's finding some cards. And what we're going to do is once we get the cards out tonight, we're not going to encourage you to come up and see them tonight. Come tomorrow at 9 o'clock to the history tent, and what will happen is it'll give us overnight to put these cards in alphabetical order, because I'm estimating there's probably about 600 cards this year. Here is a patch from Troop 43 in Dallastown. It says Christ Lutheran Church, Troop 43, Dallastown. Tons of cards are coming out.
Can't reach
Show him, see if we can back some up for you.
Have everyone's attention, please. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight to see the opening of the time capsule. The Deadwood town is open until taps this evening. The PAC leaders meeting will commence at 8:30 in the staff dining area. That is the giant green and white tent at the back of the town. Again, the PAC leaders meeting will commence at 8:30 in the staff dining area. Following the PAC leaders meeting will be the Scouts BSA leaders meeting. That will start at 9 p.m. Again, at 9 p.m., the Scouts BSA leaders meeting will also take place at the staff dining area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. It'll take us probably another 20 minutes or so to dig everything out of the back, but it just shows how scouting goes through the years. So hopefully you'll make your own history with the new time capsule. Come by tomorrow to the History Center.
No. Make it impact is probably okay. Stayed pretty good. Hard pressing now. They're wedged down in there. There's a hat in there. You think we can get it up, tilt it up after they get out of the way?
Next scouting will be strong as well.
It's empty.
Okay, just stay back. I don't want this to
I think that's $1 million in there.
Carried by Pony Express with Wizard Ranch.
Yeah, there you go, Matt.
So hopefully we'll have all these cards sorted in alphabetical order tomorrow. So if you had a friend or relative or something, you want to see their card.
Ready?
You guys handle that too easy.
You're very short.
Can I tell you something?
Wings, plumbing, and heating.
Like right.
I've got it. Never
Took
mind.
more grief over those. This stuff looks really well preserved.
Yeah, it
I am
does.
impressed.
Held up well, didn't it?
Can I tell you something? Yeah.
Here's a scout application, volunteer application.
We're taking out. Hey, it's a 30-year-old pretzel.
This was a bomb. Probably was.
It's a pretzel. It's not hard because it's been in the bag. It's probably moldy by now. Yeah, I'd be glad to see. Yeah, I'd be glad to see your. I'd be glad to. Hey, I touched it. I'd be glad. What do you want me to? I'd be
Well, I bet you tomorrow you'll see some rusty handprints on my board.
As we were filling it with cards, we cracked the valve and bled the nitrogen in slowly so that it would basically fill from the bottom up. Nitrogen being a little heavier than air, it would fill from the bottom up and push all the air. The idea was to push the oxygen out and just have it full of nitrogen so that they wouldn't get brown with age.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, oh, well, hey. The new one. To put it in the new one, go around to the front of the history center, because otherwise it'll get mixed in with the old stuff. Yeah.
Hey, George, you want to carry this in?
Yeah.
Excuse us, guys.
I'd like to go on either side and make sure stuff doesn't fall off.
Well, the time capsule was painted back in 1987.
Go over to the town. Troop 66.
Bomb itself, I don't know, probably.
The number's messed up. She's like, can I see? It's messed up. I mean, I'm not going to flex it too hard. I'm not going to be awesome.
Troop 66, come here.
Let's go.